Well, Sam, what we know so far in terms of the location, at least according to police reports, is that the individual entered the Christmas market via the periphery here across this bridge in the centre of Strasbourg. Then there's a neighbourhood lockdown, Neudorf, just down here. That was where the focus turned to as the situation developed. Now, it is worth saying, of course, situations like this, we have heard people say many times, Europe has been braced for this. It has been become clear that the individual is on effectively known to security services. And we can speak now to Chris Phillips, who's the former head of the National Security Service. Chris, joining us from the UK. Ms. Phillips, thank you for joining us. First of all, we know this is an ongoing situation. There is an area in lockdown. Could you talk us through what the authorities in France will be doing now to try and bring this under control?
Well, the most important thing is that they locate and contain this suspect so that they can get the situation under control. The French police tend to do things slightly different than perhaps the UK police in that they will go in very quickly. And I think if there's a threat to life, then they'll do that. So we can probably, because it's France, expect a quicker ending to this than perhaps in some countries.
I think actually it's very significant. You mentioned this is France, and France, of course, has had a very heightened state of awareness and preparation for these attacks. Talk us through perhaps the state France was already in prior to this incident in Strasbourg.
Oh, well, France and the French police must be absolutely exhausted. They've not only been an alert for many years now, 2 or 3 years now, where they've known that a terrorist attack could happen at any minute. But also they've had all the riots going on over the last few weekends. So goodness knows how the French police are coping with this. But of course, they have been experienced. They've experienced now of dealing with these kinds of incidents, one after the other, actually, over the last 3 or 4 years. And they've had to go in and take on armed suspects. So they're used to it. I would say it's interesting that once again, Strasbourg market has been sort of targeted here, and back in 2000 there was another attack that was thwarted by intelligence services. Actually, in the UK, we were able to give the French enough information to arrest people. So Strasbourg has been the scene, if you like, of attempted terrorist attacks before. It's no surprise that they look at Christmas markets, because Christmas markets are they're a Christian gathering, but also, of course, there are lots of people, and that's what terrorists and this particular band of terrorists want to attack.
I think it's worth saying, Mr. Phillips, you are the former head of the National Counter-Terror Office. You yourself mentioning there, I mean, the work you undertook and others undertook in terms of preparing for these attacks. A lot of questions we are seeing on social media, people saying, how could an individual known to security services on a list, perhaps, go on to do something like this? Perhaps you mentioned there how stretched the police are, but I mean, people do have questions about how individuals like this are then able to go and perpetrate attacks.
Yeah, well, you've got to realise how big that list is. In France, it's even bigger than the UK. There's 23,000 people in the UK that are of concern. In France, it'll be much higher than that. Unless you're going to have huge increases in police officers and security forces, then they're not all going to be able to be watched all the time. And of course, what we're seeing more and more now with terrorists is that they go from thinking about terrorism perhaps to actually going and doing it very quickly. And that's very difficult to stop. You've got to be on it. You've got to be a little bit lucky. And I think, in the UK, we've been lucky up until now. We've caught more than have gone through. But this is a problem for all police forces around the world. And of course, Strasbourg has particular problems. It's right near the border with Germany. And of course, there's a movement across, and police forces don't work well across borders either. So it's very difficult for the police to totally prevent these kinds of attacks. Time will tell how much information and what they knew of this guy. But of course, it's very easy if you can get hold of a gun to go and kill people.
Well, actually, I'm picking up on that point, to getting hold of a weapon. I think that is perhaps what a lot of people would look at terror attacks that are perpetrated in France. A number of them have been weapons attacks. These weapons seemingly able to find their way into the hands of people on the streets of Europe.
Well, yeah, and in Europe, particularly in France, there is a high gun ownership. But But these, of course, these criminals now, terrorists are criminals, and they're mixing up and linking up with organised crime groups who have got access to all sorts of firearms. And this is a big problem for societies over the coming years. Is the mixture, if you like, between organised crime groups and terrorists, all mixing together in prisons and meeting each other. And really, organised crime groups don't care who they sell their weapons to. So this is a big problem, and it's not going to go away. But I would say this: all businesses and in Strasbourg now are learning a lesson. They're learning a lesson that you need to have some plans in place for dealing with sort of this kind of incident. We don't know what the next terrorist attack will look like. We don't know what this one will end up as. So you need to have, as a business, some plans in place to protect yourself and know how to react.
Well, Chris Phillips, thank you very much indeed. That's Chris Phillips there, the former head of the National Counter-Terrorism Office, giving us some real detailed insight there, Sam, about how the authorities will be dealing with this situation.